All right, friends, it is Easter weekend for me. Welcome. We are on chapter 2 of Personality and Wholeness in Therapy, and this is the reading room, and I am Jeff Cook. We are jumping into a framework today. Chapter 2 is going to pitch a framework for PDP, his language for the Enneagram, and we're going to see what he's got to offer. Lots to like in this chapter, lots to be critical of. I'm going to be critical a lot up front, and just know that it gets better. But as it stands, he's putting his cards on the table, setting out the course that we're going to swim. Going to be a good time. Just going to jump right into this sucker. First sentence. What do these personality patterns, Enneagram, look like, and more importantly, feel like from the inside? He's done a great job of pitching the fact that a lot of psychological work, psychology itself, ends up focusing on external behavior, and that's what gets studied. What often doesn't get studied is inside work, inside perception. How do I think of myself? He calls this narrative data. Narrative data is, let me tell you a story about how I'm experiencing the world. This is high level, very hard to study as it stands. It's way easier to say, look, reality is about what I see out there, as opposed to this inner experience of somebody's consciousness, motivations, and biases. But getting into that matters. So he's going to talk on page 25 about the kinds of studies that have already been done in Enneagram. He notes that on Google Scholar, there are 1,050 entries with Enneagram in the title from 1990 to 2023. I'm just going to put my cards on the table. I'm super skeptical of all this. This may be the case. I've looked through these. It's just not robust. It sounds robust. It's not. And I know this because I read the next thing he cites. He says, the state of empirical research to date is very well summarized in a recent systematic review by Hook et al. 2020. I believe these guys are at Baylor. On the Enneagram of personality, they found mixed evidence of reliability and validity of the personality constructs and their measurements. Hook et al. That is, this guy Hook went through all of the Enneagram literature and summarized what had been found. And again, I read the study. It's not much. It doesn't seem very, for me, and again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not necessarily sure what I should be looking for here, but it did not seem very compelling. The word that Siegel uses, and it's spot on, in summarizing Hook's essay, summarizing all the evidence, he says, overall, they suggest that current evidence points towards the potential to increase workplace effectiveness and promote personal growth, and believe additional research aimed at developing the Enneagram as a therapeutic tool is warranted. Friends, if the scientific evidence comes back and somebody says it has potential, that tells you where the research is at. 1,050 essays apparently have established potential. Not impressive. What is impressive, by the way, is this book and the stuff that he's going to do. So maybe setting that all aside. New day. We got some stuff really worth talking about because, again, he wants to say he's got 50,000 narrative experiences to build on. And that seems like it's got some stuff. It may be the case that potential is just a humble term. So let me grant humble is worthwhile. After talking about the previous research, he jumps into his research and just what he's excited about. And maybe it's the case that all he has is potential. But he says, page 26, our more recent, much smaller data subset of hundreds of individuals. This is a smaller data subset than what Dr. Daniels has. Our more recent, much smaller data subset of hundreds of individuals trying out our new PDP framework in workshops and clinical settings without initial reference to the Enneagram has yielded fascinating new insights and continues to support the impression that these 9 patterns are a human phenomenon, not just something skewed by those who've sought out a particular form of exploration of the inner world. Again, nothing given here, although I assume it's in the book. But just another argument from authority. He's an authority. I suppose if he's really excited, we can take him at his word. But that's all he's given us here. In these studies, all share the notion that these identified repeating ways of their personality, although adaptive for functioning in the world, eventually become highly automatic, habitual, and potentially trouble-causing. This is going to be a huge part of this chapter. Automatic, habitual, and potentially trouble-causing. How much choice, how much free choice do you actually have? How much of your Enneagram type is actually affecting your behavior? Can you change? And especially, can you change your really negative, trouble-causing behavior? That's going to be a big element of this chapter. He wants to build on Dr. David Daniels' work, Helen Palmer's work. They are of the narrative tradition. And given those 50,000 interactions through the workshops, he says they have come through the narrative inquiry process of their workshop approach to identify 9 different patterns of inner experience. These patterns are characterized by tendencies, which seem automatic in the way in which attentional focus, emotions, perception, thinking, and somatic sensations are shaped by the mind. That's a great Kantian phrase. They're shaped by the mind and, at least to us, seem to flow from and into motivations beneath behavior. In this regard, the patterns are a novel, unique, inside, deeply personal, whole person perspective on how humans manage attention and the motivational energy of emotions. Again, the core stuff about ourselves, what our mind is actually doing when it takes in perception. This is why I said it was Kantian. The Kant wants to say that the mind is active and grabs perception and categorizes it and then produces something like consciousness, and that leads to our behavior. Very Kantian kind of framework here, in that he is suggesting that the neural pathways that have developed in our brains are doing work on what we experience. And that matters, because you and I might experience the same thing, and yet the way that our brain has been fashioned is going to interpret all of it differently and cause us to want things that are different from one another, given who we are and how we've been formed. So the patterns are not by far the entirety of one's personality, though, as we shall see, they do deal with hugely important aspects of it. In this sense, exploring personality is open to only a part, perhaps small in some, perhaps large in others, of how we experience life that shape our sense of who we are. Who we are is in scare quotes here, quote unquote. Our sense of who we are is interesting because there is who you are and then your understanding of who you are. And those are different. In fact, he says, it may be that, quote unquote, who we truly are is someone and something beneath personality, not personality itself. What this means is that if we use a term like baseline personality pattern, this may actually signify a way that emotions, thinking, and behaving, what he calls your personality, keep you away from a deeper essence, an essence that might be akin to what we have named wholeness. And of course, the whole book is on wholeness. This is a mess in terms of metaphysics and epistemology. He is sticking his toe into my field. So let me just comment on this for a second. Epistemology is how you know what you know. Metaphysics is what reality is like, what you are composed of. Are you just a body and a brain? Are you a brain and what we might call a mind? Are you a brain and a soul? How does the immaterial, the mind and soul, how does it interact with your physical body? And when you bring in language like who we truly are and some deeper essence, you're going into some metaphysical places. And this is overlapped with the problem of epistemology of how do you know any of this? As I said, there's who you are and how you experience who you are. Those are two robust categories. And so work's going to need to get done on that. Just throwing out, chum for sharks like me is like we're gonna it's just gonna make our appetites a little bit more severe. He writes, when we feel coherent, complete, connected, and content, that is our coming home. This view is conciliant with a range of contemplative and indigenous teachings and with the poetic images and philosophical notions that we're already at home, already whole. We simply need to let the junk of life get out of the way. That junk may be the rigid expression of personality. This is an incredibly large claim, and his data is contemplative and indigenous teachings. Those may be valuable. Those are not scientific. Those may be valuable. That is not what I'm here for. And in large measure, the question becomes, why should I believe contemplative teaching or indigenous teaching or poetic images or philosophical notions that we're coming home or already home? Way more work needs to get done here. So I'm going to be very skeptical. Now, he's going to pitch two ways of coming to this idea. The first I'm going to reject. The second, it seems a little bit more on point for me. So let me read the one I'm going to reject. And by the way, this may appeal to you. And there's no knock. All of this may be true. It's not verified. That's the problem so far. I mean, especially if you're jumping into philosophy like this, you just need to do more work. So hopefully, I mean, obviously it's a 400-page book, so maybe we'll get to it. But he writes at the bottom of 27, so why focus on personality in therapy and in life if it's not who we truly are? It is the inflexible experience and expression of personality. They may block us from living with a sense of wholeness, a way of living that is in fact our birthright. Birthright is a massive philosophical category. Can a scientist talk about birthright? And in this way, wholeness is inside each of us and does not need to be constructed or created. It needs to be revealed and released by relaxing or removing that junk of personality. It might be the case that he's setting this up in order to reject it, but it feels like he's allowing this to linger. But like your personality get in the way of your sense of wholeness and who you truly are is just going to need some work. It's going to need more work because you need to define who are you then, who you truly are. What is that? That's going to be a question. Now, on the other hand, he writes, and this is good because we're transitioning. On the other hand, there might be a different view. It may be that we need these personality filters of sensory experience to prioritize what matters most and shape what can and cannot be attended to with vigilance. It may be that personality reveals the filter we have acquired, in part due to temperament and then intensified by adaptation to experience that then shape our predominant developmental pathway, our Enneagram, PDP. In this sense, we may never be able to, nor would it even be desirable to, fully discard our personality, but rather relax its potential stranglehold on our lives to make it more a playground than a prison, as we've said earlier. I suppose as I'm reading it for the third time, it sounds like he's giving weight to that view as opposed to the junk view. Your personality is junk. It's getting in the way of who you truly are. I don't think that's where he's going to land. I think he's going to land on this secondary one, which is that your personality is what is it? Personality reveals the filter we have acquired. And that filter can be healthy, unhealthy. Your personality can be healthy or unhealthy and needs work. As it stands, really worth jumping into if you get into the philosophy of this whole thing. I'm going to totally skip the bottom of 28 and 29 because I will spend 2 hours talking about it if you want to. So Tuesday, come with thoughts on this if you want. But the stuff when he starts talking about autopilot models And, we can, with effort, identify our tendencies and change them. And his stuff where we're asleep in the foyer and shaping of the flow of energy does not require consciousness. All of this gets into some very physicalist language that feels like we are fully determined and lack volition. And I would really want to be skeptical here, because it would undermine his entire project. If it's true that you lack choice to make choices for yourself and your trajectory, then it would undermine his whole project. Now, I don't think he goes there. I think he does think that you have volition, but you can't go too far down that road without undermining your case. So that may not make any sense to some of you. That's just fine. I'm moving on. Page 29. This is the section entitled A Few Initial Observations and Interpretations of Enneagram Teaching. Patterns, not types. Okay, he doesn't like the word types. He thinks it's too static, I think, and not flexible enough on the edges. While in most of the Enneagram world, the 9 personality patterns are called personality types, as I would affirm, the word type is convenient shorthand for constructs that are more like hues on the color wheel. All language, my brother, is convenient shorthand. That's what language is. Just as a side, I'm gonna get defensive, so just you'll hear it in a lot of my language here. All this language I'm going to employ, which is convenient shorthand. That is, they are not fixed. Types are not fixed or mutually exclusive categories, which the word type suggests in conventional psychological parlance. Each of the types is defined by a few features of inner experience involving attention, feeling, somatic sensation, and cognition, which seem to motivate related patterns of behavior. This inner view of personality is in contrast to a focus on external, observable, and therefore more easily measured traits. Just want to pause there. We're going to see his use of patterns working for him in terms of the way that he needs the word to work. So when talking about Enneagram types, he's talking about patterns, and he's relating it to a color, to colors, that there's different hues. And you see some patterns with the oranges, but that are different than the patterns from the reds. All of that I can dig. A huge part of his criteria for truth is usefulness. And here's the thing about rejecting the idea of types is it's not useful. It's not as useful. Employing the idea of types really allows you to do some stuff. So most of the work that I do with Katie on Rewired in terms of talking through how we ought to bring language to types, and especially how types function in terms of their stress and security move, in terms of how they interact with affect and coping style. Type is a ridiculously useful term, and according to his own truth standards, that would merit a little bit of attention. Now, if he wants to go with patterns for his own project because he thinks it's more quote unquote useful, then I suppose he's got me on that one. But I think it's a mistake to reject the word types. Page 30. In narrative Enneagram, teaching unearthing answers is very much an inside job. In and of itself, this part of working with the patterns is extremely valuable in developing capacities of what is called the inner observer, the ability to observe one's inner experience objectively. It's again the case. I'm just shocked that this isn't more a part of psychology. That seems, as I think about psychology, that seems like this is what it is. But apparently this is new. The most resonant patterns become focal points for the work of change. While very often one's pattern is dominant and more than enough to work with at the start, most people find something more like one predominant pattern with notable streaks of others or blends of two or more. The PDP framework embraces this reality of patterns, not types. This is a huge misstep. Brother, Dr. Siegel, huge misstep. The reason that your type The reason that your pattern as a 1 looks like the pattern of a 4 is because there's a type, and the ways that types function end up having the stress and security moves. I know that he'll probably go into this, but it's just confusing language here if you say that the types blend. That's just again, on usefulness, that's a big mistake, it seems to me. At the same time, he concludes it offers an account that is consistent with current scientific understanding of personality as more verb-like and context-dependent than rigid and noun-like. I get that, but that's how language functions, and that's why language is useful. Language is always shorthand. You take all of the Americans and you say, these are Americans. These people are vastly different. Here are all the women. These people are vastly different. But the word American does work. The word woman does work. And you can nuance that. You can play out some, qualifications if you're making a point. That's the art of communication, brother. I'm calling this man brother over and again because I don't want to come across as offensive. It's not rigid to use big categories. You can come to big categories with flexibility. One that I am. I'm coming with flexibility, of course. Bottom of 30. As you approach growth and change, it is the stuff of inner experience that becomes a key part of understanding and moving toward greater well-being. For us, this is one of the most compelling features of the traditional narrative Enneagram approach that drew each of us to explore the insights it might provide. Personality from the inside out. I think narrative is a great way to come to Enneagram. So much of my work ends up being typology. So much of my work ends up being I'm looking for the systems. But I really wish I had more of a gear here of getting lots of people together, same type, same personality pattern, and just getting them talking about what the patterns are there and what's elevated. So when you do studies with panels, that can just be a stellar way of exposing what Enneagram is, because the best people to learn from are always if you want to learn about 9s, you need to hear from 9s. You can do typology like mine all day long, but it's often the case that I'm just creating language for the 9s to speak about themselves is really my best play. So I think he's right in saying this is a great approach. So, hey, if it could be categorized scientifically, then we'd have something to work with. Lo and behold, let's see where this book goes. All right, so bottom of 32. The goal of inner work with these personality patterns is not about eliminating them or switching them to some other type or pathway. Instead, it entails learning to recognize and soften or relax aspects of that baseline personality structure that may be habitually limiting and constricting the flow of attention and emotional energy into behavior. This integrative transformation also involves developing access to other less practiced ways of responding to life, the higher capacities of other pathways, and thus building a more flexible and adaptive mind that can allow other ways of perceiving or responding in life to become more accessible. That whole 2 paragraphs feels like he's rejecting the, indigenous contemplative teachings. We're not trying to eliminate our personality patterns. Apparently, he's being more aggressive in saying we're not going down that road. But more importantly here, well, it's not more important, but in combination here, he's putting his thumb on what I think is what really matters with Enneagram growth is naming your excesses. Now, he makes this very, what quote unquote scientific, neurobiologically, he thinks that there are ruts that your brain fashions, like when you consistently are making choices that reinforce your primary motive. So if you're a 2 and you just are hitting the earn love button, that is excess, and that's not a healthy way to be in the world. And so a lot of his stuff is going to elevate balance, wholeness. He's saying it as developing the higher capacity of other pathways, that is kind of letting in these other, it's balance. I don't know why you got to ditch type here again. You are a type, in my view. Let me just say my view. You are a type. You're always going to be a type. He actually is going to affirm that. Or you're going to always have these patterns. But healthy expressions of those patterns means elevating your heart, your emotional life, your mind, your mental life, and your somatic intuitive experiences in healthy ways. All 9 types, all 9 personality patterns can do that. That doesn't mean you're becoming a different number, and it doesn't mean even that you're employing another number's way of being in the world. It seems to me what you are doing is becoming, and this is the goal, whole, harmonious, as he said. Now, he has a different definition for wholeness than I think I'm expressing right there, but that seems to me quite on point. So that's a good place for us to close what I'm doing with the podcast feed. I'm going to continue on for about another half hour, unpacking the rest of this chapter at aroundthecircle.org. If you are interested in listening to the rest of this episode, just go to it's probably going to be minute 26, 25 or so, and then just pick up. But it's going to be free for free members. So sign up for a free membership. Add this to your podcast feed. It takes 2 seconds. Just look at how you look up how you turn on the podcast from Patreon onto Spotify or onto Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We would love to have you. If you sign up, give us your email. You're just going to see all the free stuff that we're giving away and ways that you can connect with us in the future. And especially if you get into this material, again, if you want to go further in your understanding of Enneagram at more robust levels, like this is level 400 college level, grad school level material that I am trying to elevate. Jump in with us. This may not be for everybody, but you listen to this whole thing, and so apparently it's for you. Come over, join up, sign up for a free membership on aroundthecircle.org. Sign up for the membership, which is $20 a month, and you get the first week for free. Try it out. Poke around, see what's there. Join us on Tuesdays to discuss this book. We would love to have you and connect with you, talk shop with you. And by the way, our Tuesday gathering, talking through this book, lasts for about 75 minutes on Tuesday nights. Just about a kick-ass time. So I'm going to sign off. May all good things be yours.